All righty. Thank you everyone for joining us for the DIY sprinkler repair for the city of Watauga. It's sponsored by Tarrant Regional Water District and the city of Watauga. And today, my name is Heather Bass, and I am a conservation specialist at Tarrant Regional Water District. And so before I introduce our speaker and we start talking about the sprinkler repair, I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about TRWD. So Tarrant Regional Water District is your raw water supplier. So we maintain all of the pipelines and infrastructure that's necessary to pump surface water from those lakes and pump them over to water treatment plants in all of our different cities. And those water treatment plants in our cities then treat it to drinking water standards, and then it comes to your house or to your business or whatever. We also we partner for these type of educational events and all kinds of other events. We partner with cities that are in Tarrant County, so like Fort Worth, Mansfield, Watauga, Arlington, those type of cities. And then we also partner with other organizations. And so the reason why Tarrant Regional Water District is bringing you this type of educational programming today is because conservation is an important water supply strategy to continue to supply water to a growing population here in Tarrant County. And so if you would like to look at our conservation website, it's savetarrantwater.com, and that's where you can find all of our conservation information and our programs that we do. So you can sign up for free weekly watering advice, where custom to your location, you can get watering advice either to your email or to your cell phone every Monday, telling you approximately how much you should water your lawn for that week, depending on the weather. And then you can also sign up for a free sprinkler evaluation, where a licensed irrigator will come to your house, and for free they will come and do an entire evaluation of your sprinkler system, let you know how much water you're using, and let you know how you can potentially reduce waste if there's any wasteful stuff going on. We also have there on SaveTarrantWater.com the event calendar of classes just like this one that are happening in the future. And then there's tons of videos of previous classes and water saving tips and all kinds of information there. And in order to provide you with some of this educational material, we partner with some of the other organizations like I was talking about, and that's people like the Tarrant County Master Gardeners and Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. And so, like I said, today we are going to be talking about DIY sprinkler repair, so all the great repairs that you can do for your own sprinkler. And we are going to be hearing from Dr. Dotty Woodson, and she is now retired, but she used to be an employee of the AgriLife Extension Service, and she is an expert in many things, and one of those things is sprinkler repair. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to her.
Okay, thank you very much, Heather. I want to thank everyone for coming today and taking the time to learn. I hope that I can empower you to check out your sprinkler system and see what you need to be doing to make it more efficient. So we're doing these type of classes because when we ask people what their biggest issue is about irrigation, they all say, well, water bill's too high. And so one of the first things I need to explain to you, there's more than your water use on your water bill. Your water bill, the first line of it will be how much water you used and how much you are charged for that water that goes through the drinking water treatment plant, because that's what you're irrigating. You're irrigating with the same water that you're drinking and cooking with, showering with in your household. And I think that's very, very important that you understand that. The second thing on your water bill will be your wastewater charge. You are charged a certain amount of water for the water that you use that goes back through the wastewater treatment plant. And so those are your water. Okay, but below that, you probably have garbage pickup, recycle pickup, you might have an environmental charge, and you might have a stormwater charge in any of the other charges your city has on that bill. And so in order to figure out exactly how much water is used and exactly how much that costs you, you can look at that bill. And a lot of cities are changing to a you know, Wi-Fi, not a Wi-Fi system, but a system where they don't have to come and check your meter. They can read your meter by just driving down your street. And so it's very important that you look at that. Now, how much of that water that it says you're going to use is going to your irrigation system? So what we have to look at then is how your irrigation system works and how you can tell how much of that water charge is going into your irrigation system. So let's look at all the issues that people have about this high water bill, and then we're going to talk about how you can make it more efficient by doing certain things. So first of all, on your water bill where it says you use so many gallons of water, there might be a second line that says you've used so many gallons of water, because a lot of our cities have what is called a tier water schedule. I live in Fort Worth, and the first 6,000 gallons that you use is about 1 cent a gallon, you know, but you jump up and use more than 6,000 gallons, and every gallon over 6,000 gallons, you're charged a little bit higher price for. Oh my gosh, if you go over 12,000 gallons, then it jumps up again, and it jumps up again after 18,000. So you can see that the more water you use, it's going to be a different price if your city is doing that. And that's a way of letting people know that, you know, maybe you look at all the water conservation things that you can do both inside and outside. Okay, so what are the most common irrigation issues? I hate to tell you, but it's really over watering. You know, I haven't watered, you know, we got 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? We got 1.5 inches rainfall in my landscape. And then a week and a half went by and I didn't water, didn't turn on my irrigation system. And then we got another 1 inch of water. I mean, I haven't watered in a long time, but before that, we had 6 weeks without any rainfall at all in August. And August is the hottest month. It's the lowest rainfall month. So irrigation, depending on the plants you have in your irrigation, is pretty important to keep the landscape looking like you want it to protect your foundation, because that's very important. If you have a slab foundation, even pure and beam foundations benefit from foundation water. And that's usually why we have a foundation planting around the house that we keep mulched, and it reminds us to irrigate. The other thing is a poor design and installation. But, you know, that might have been, if it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 25, they might have had, this is the rules, this is how you design and install an irrigation system. But over the years, conservation has become so important that the design parameters have changed a little bit. And also the other reason that that might happen is you've changed your landscape, but the old design doesn't fit with the new landscape. And so that has to be looked at. The other one is a poor irrigation schedule. And a poor irrigation schedule can leave you dry spots, it can leave you wet spots, and can, you know, in shady areas, you might drown the plants. In sunny areas, you might, whoa, we need to water more. You know, so there's all kinds of things that go into irrigation scheduling. So we're going to talk about that. And then no routine maintenance. Every time I say, well, you know, if you would get your irrigation looked at and brought up to a very, very efficient thing, that's what Tarrant Regional Water District is offering, is an irrigation checkup, where someone comes to your house and checks your irrigation system, checks your schedule, checks your water pressure, quite a few things. And then they make suggestions about how you can change it. And they will actually even change your schedule for you to a more efficient schedule. And so we'll talk about that scheduling of your irrigation and the no routine maintenance. And when I ask people that, they say, well, it costs too much. And I say, you know, irrigators have to take a 40-hour course. They have to pay about $500 to $700 for that course. And then they have to go take a test that costs $250. And then they have to, once they pass a test and get their license, they have to maintain that license by taking CEUs every year, or they lose their license. They have to maintain the insurance to come into your landscape and do their work. I mean, there's so many costs for an irrigator, just like for a plumber, just like for an electrician, and just like for an air conditioner repair person. So all these costs. So yes, you will find that a licensed irrigator can come to your house, and it's about $100 an hour. And that might seem expensive, but boy, if your air conditioner is broken, I'm sure you'd be glad, to pay that $100 an hour. So you've got to consider all of this. And then runoff. We have very, very, very heavy clay soil in this area. And unfortunately, a lot of times the soil cannot absorb the water as fast as rain is falling or as irrigation water is being applied. And if the soil can't absorb the rainwater or the irrigation water, guess what? It goes out in the street, and it carries all your soil with it, any fertilizer, any pesticides, herbicides that you put out, and it goes into the storm drain. And then it goes into the nearest creek, unfiltered, untreated. This is a big, big problem. And so the new irrigation designs is all about not allowing runoff, and it's also about the scheduling to not allow runoff. So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, I mentioned about changing your landscape design, which I have done because my front yard was all turf grass because my son played baseball there. Well, when he got about 14 years old, I said, there's a bicycle, the ballpark's down the road. And so I put in a lot more planted beds in my landscape. So that's a common thing. Now, the first thing that we have to understand is all the components of an irrigation system. And this is the first component of a water system, an irrigation system in your household water. This is a water meter. And you can see that it measures the water in cubic feet. And there's about 7.5 or 7.6 gallons in a cubic foot. And so it's very, very easily converted, to gallons, and that will be on your water bill, the gallons part. But why is this important for you to understand? Because all your water goes through here. All the water that goes into your household goes here, and all the water that goes into your irrigation goes through this meter, and that's how they charge you. Now, when we talk about that wastewater charge, the gallons of water that you are using during the winter months, and look at the average there, December, January, February, and think about that's your wastewater that's going, you're not irrigating those months, so they might charge you according to that. Every city is slightly different how they figure out the wastewater rate, and you can call your water department and find that out. Now, when we talk about that meter, we have a very, very large pipe like this, very, very large pipe that goes from the meter all the way into your house, okay? This goes into your house. And if you have a slab foundation, this was established way before the slab was repaired, and everything, all your wastewater and all your city water, drinking water comes up. But somewhere near the curb, if that's where your meter is, or in the back, if that's where your meter is, there's a T right here. And off this T comes another large pipe. And that large pipe takes water into your irrigation system. Now, most cities require all new irrigation systems have to have a backflow prevention device. And this is, in the past, always been put underground. All new irrigations is requiring that you put this above ground so it can be tested to make sure it's working right. Now, what is the advantage of this backflow prevention device? Okay, if I put this backflow prevention device between my irrigation system and the pipe that goes into my house, what is that going to do for me and the city water? It prevents water from your irrigation system from backing into the pipe that goes into your house. And there is a chance that since the main line of an irrigation system always has water in it, there's a chance for contamination. And so because of that, you don't want that water going into your house, but same thing. You don't want it coming out here into the city water either. And so that's what a backflow prevention device is all about. New irrigations all have to have them in most cities, and some are older systems have to have it too. It just depends on if your city's requiring it. Eventually, it's going to be a state rule, and all irrigation systems will require a backflow prevention device. So I just want you to understand all these different components so that you can judge what is going on in your system. Okay, and then we have this valve. And so you can see where the water is coming in after it gets a signal. See that lightning flash? That's an electrical signal, you know, coming from your irrigation controller to your irrigation valve. And what this signal does, it tells that valve to come up. And when that valve comes up, that's when you get the water out into what we call your sprinkler system. But it's not your main line. Your main line off of your household water will go all the way through your front yard, all the way through a side yard, and then into the backyard. And every zone you have in your irrigation system is going to have one of these valves. And you have the capability of scheduling your irrigation according to each of those areas and how much water they need by the plant water requirement and by the soil that you have there. And so this is just a great, great way that we can look at our irrigation system and we can say, staying too wet here, staying too dry here. How can we fix that so we get really, really good coverage everywhere and don't have a lot of problems like that? And also, how can we get it to not run off, and how can we get it to not be contaminated into your household water? Backflow prevention device does that. All your outdoor spigots will also have a backflow prevention device on them. Okay, now here we have the valve. And one of the things you're seeing in this picture is a thumb come up, because you can actually, this is usually in a 6-inch round, what we call a valve box with a lid on it, either green or black or purple, because a lot of people are using harvested rainwater or recycled water or reused water instead of potable water, and everything's purple. But this can be turned off and on, just like any, you know, gate valve or ball valve. And so, of course, we keep it off, and then we have this. The wires turn it on from our controller. And so I just want you to know all of these different types of things. Your irrigation system is there for you. And so let's look at the next thing, okay, here. And the next thing, of course, is our sprinkler. And so we have a system of sprinklers that are going to put the water out a certain distance. It's called the throw. And so how far does it need to go? Does it need to go 3 feet because it's a little shrub bed or flower bed? Or does it need to go 6 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet? How far does your sprinkler head need to put the water out? The other thing about it is right here on top of your sprinkler system, right here, you have what is called a nozzle. And that nozzle right here, this nozzle right here, is what is going to determine how far the irrigation water goes and the pattern it goes. You want a full circle pattern, you want a half circle pattern, quarter circle pattern. What is the pattern that you need? And so when you look at your irrigation system and you see the water is not covering all the different areas, you have hot spots in the sunny parts of your landscape, you have wet spots in the shady part, this might need to be looked at, this nozzle. So I'm going to show you lots of pictures of why this nozzle might need replacing. Now, when we look at the nozzle, the next thing we have to look at, of course, is the riser that's inside here. And so this riser is going to pop up for you. I usually can do this with my fingers. I don't know why I'm not being able to. And usually we all use 4-inch risers to pop up. There's a spring in there, and the water pressure causes that spring, you know, to pop up the nozzle. The nozzle, or the riser and the nozzle. The nozzle is usually hand tightened on here. And if it's a newer nozzle, you'll see the pattern on here. There's some markings that will show the pattern. And then the number on there, like 6 or 8 or 12 or 15, will show you the distance it's going to throw the water. And so it's very important that you understand that. You see right here, you see those little notches right here? That tells me this is going to be a half circle pattern. This might be something I'd put next to my sidewalk to go out and away from my sidewalk, next to my curb, next to my driveway, a half circle. A full circle, the notches would be all over it. And then if I look real carefully, there's usually a number right here on that. And in this case, that number is 15. And so I know it's going to throw a half circle pattern, and it's going to throw 15 feet. Now, if I show you some of these older nozzles, you're not going to be able to see this. It's not going to be there, you know. And so sometimes you have to turn it on and measure how far the water throws it and see the pattern that it's doing. And so we have to understand all these different things. Okay, the other thing that I want you to see, you see this white ring where that riser goes down into it? You know, Heather, I'm not seeing my picture here, so I can make sure I'm holding this correctly. Is that something I need to do, or do you do that? Put my picture down somewhere that I can see this. Heather?
No, I think that it's just whether or not it's one of the whatever you're viewing on your screen, one of your
Right.
windows, I guess. But I can see it perfectly fine when you hold it up like that.
Okay, well, tell me if it's not, though, so I know I'm doing the right thing. This is called
Okay,
the
yeah.
wiper. And the whole purpose of this wiper is not to allow leaves and twigs and dirt, soil, and, you know, grass clippings to go down into the housing of your sprinkler. You got to realize the soil line is about right here. You really want to be able to see this. You don't want it up too high because then it's in the way of your mower, but you do want to be able to see this top here. And then this is called the cap. This cap can be unscrewed and everything cleaned out, but the main clean out needs to be this nozzle. And so sometimes we'll do that. We'll pop this nozzle up and unscrew it and check it. It'll have the nozzle there, and then well, usually there's a filter there too, and sometimes they are full of soil or full of grass clippings. And so we sometimes check that if the pattern, and I'll show you pictures, not good. The body, the housing of the sprinkler, you know, this is very, very hard plastic. It's not going to be cracked or damaged because it's underground. And then you have where it attaches to your other riser. This riser comes off of your, what we call lateral lines. Those are the lines on the water delivery side of your valve. And so we have to understand all these different components. You can see, you know, the nozzles here, the caps here, here's the wiper, here's the riser inside the sprinkler head, here's the spring. And don't hesitate. I mean, you can take this apart. You can take this apart and see all these components if you want to. So, you know, think about, I got to know how it works in order to get the maintenance to be right. That's the main thing you have to think in terms of. Okay, I got to put this down a little bit. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And the next slide shows you all of these components. And so one of the things we look for when we do an irrigation checkup is where it is leaking. I've seen the leak here in the cap because, you know, your string trimmer hits it, you hit it, the mower wheels hit it, and it comes loosey-goosey. You know, sometimes it gets cracked, but most of the sprinkler heads are using a different type of plastic now that don't get as often as cracked as the ones that used to. And again, like I said, you want to make sure the soil level, you don't want it too deep and you don't want it too high. Then right here, there's an opportunity if you hit this 750 times, some of the threading here can stretch. And not the riser threading necessarily, but the threading inside, you know, the sprinkler. So you could get a leak there. Always check to make sure it's tight first before you think that it's a threading, because, you know, when you're installing, you know, 3,000 of these in a job, sometimes you can not get that tightened down good. Okay, so in your lateral line where the water's coming through your valve, then you have a T that it's slip here, and threaded here. And so your riser goes into this threading. Again, maybe there's a chance that these threads or the threads in the PVC fitting can get compromised and leak a little bit. But this has to be hit really, really, really hard in order to break the seal of this where it's into your lateral line. It does happen, and I want you to be aware of it, but it's very rare. All of these are very rare. So the main thing that we want you to check for are your nozzles, partially clogged, maybe all the way clogged, the pattern's not right, the length of the throw is not right. The sprinkler nozzle sprays water onto your sidewalk, driveway, or road. You know, that's not something that we want to happen. And so you need to think about that. The sprinkler nozzle head broken, gushing water out the top of the pipe. We'll see pictures of all of this. The sprinkler head no longer straight up and down. The sprinkler causes a cloud of mist instead of a sprinkle. The grass, shrubbery, tree blocking the distribution of the water. The dry landscape areas, this could be a possible cause of low water pressure, poor distribution, plugged nozzle, and of course our prevailing wind. The irrigation heads installed too far apart or not at the recommended square or triangle pattern. So we'll look at all these problems through pictures, and then we will suggest ways that you can fix it. Now, in order to get a buy-in for water waste with a sprinkler system and the common irrigation problems, this column is what we want to look at, the possibilities of all of this water you're paying for that it's going to waste. And so the inefficiency things, even worse, you know, due to all these inefficient things. Look at that column over there, 40,000 gallons, 20,000, 61, 16,000. I mean, you're paying for all the water that goes through your meter. So you've got to understand you are the best person to look at your irrigation system and fix some of these things. If it comes to something you don't feel capable of fixing, that's when you call the irrigator. But if you identify all the problems in advance and tell the irrigator about it, one of the advantages of that is they will bring all that equipment to you, and it won't be 2 trips, it'll just be 1. And the irrigation checkup that the Tarrant Regional Water District offers for free, did Heather say that? It's free. You have to make an appointment and you have to be there when the irrigator comes by, and he walks you through your whole irrigation system and points out the inefficiencies of it or if something needs repairing. And then he looks at your schedule and suggests a more efficient schedule. But he puts that in a report and emails it back to you. So he keeps a copy, Tarrant Regional Water District has a copy, and you have a copy. So that list, is it one thing wrong or one thing inefficient? Is it 3 things? You know, what is it going to be? And also he puts your schedule on there, the previous schedule and the new schedule, and how much water you're going to save because of the new schedule. It's a really, really amazing free service. So please take advantage of that. So these are all the very, very obvious things that you can see if you want to do your own irrigation checkup. So please, please look at this. So what we want to do is find the problem and flag the problem, or maybe not flag it, and then fix it. And so we want to talk to you about how you can do that fix thing. Heather, are you seeing and hearing me okay? A network connection thing came up. Heather?
Yeah, I hear and see you just fine.
Okay, just checking my hotspot thing. Yeah, it shows you. Okay, So this is an irrigation controller. And one of the things that I find when I go out and do irrigation checkups for people is that some people say, oh, our controller? Yeah, I know where it is. And if they say that, I know they've never used it before in their lives, but they depend on their landscape company, or if the landscape company has an irrigation division, you know, they depend on these people. But you know what? You need to be proactive about this and know where your irrigation controller is and know how it works. I don't expect anyone, if you've had your irrigation system for quite a while, to have the owner's manual, but I will share this with you. The owner's manual is online at the irrigation control. This is a Hunter controller in this picture, but if it's Toro, you know, if it's Rainbird, they have the owner's manuals online. And even better than that, they have a 1-800-I-WILL-HELP-YOU phone number that you can call, and they will help you walk through what your irrigation controller has the capability of doing. So the first thing when we look at our irrigation controller is we want the current day and time. This is very important. In the city of Fort Worth, we're allowed to water, we're really lucky, 2 days a week. Some cities, you're only allowed to water 1 day a week. And you have to know what that schedule is. And if you don't have this set correctly, the day and the time, you might be invalid. You might be doing it incorrectly and therefore in violation of their water conservation plan. Water conservation plan determines that you are 2 days a week, 1 day a week. These are the dates you're assigned to water. And then this is a time of day. They don't want you watering in the heat of the day. And so most cities in their water conservation plan have where it says water from 6 o'clock in the evening to midnight on your day to water, water from midnight to 10 o'clock in the morning on that day to water. So that gives you a lot of time in order to address your irrigation needs. Now, I know a lot of commercial places with large properties need a variance for that, you know, midnight to 10 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock to midnight again on their day to water, and they can get those variants. But most of us in a home situation, we don't need that. We just need to get our irrigation system to work efficiently. So this day and time becomes very important. The next thing we have to look at is the start times. Notice it doesn't say start time, it says start times. And that's because in our clay soil, what we want to do to make it more efficient, to get more water into the soil, we want to do what is called a cycle and soak irrigation schedule. So this gives us multiple start times that we can do. And so when it comes down then to these different cycles, you could have 1 cycle, you could have 2, you could have 3, you could have 4, and multiples of all those. And so it's very, very important that we think about maybe initiating on a flat area, maybe 2 cycles, on a sloped area, maybe 3 or 4, depending on the slope, to avoid losing the water you're paying for out into the storm drain. The other thing is the idea of how long do I need to run the system? And so one of the neat things that Tarrant Regional Water District passes out are these catch cans and the directions about how to do these. Now, Heather, how can they get these from you?
I can check with the city of Watauga, and I will send out emails if I can get the city of Watauga to offer them at the library or something like that. That's usually what we do.
That's a great idea. Yeah, great idea. And what we can do is in one of our zones, we can put out, I think there's 4 catch cans in the packet. We can put these out and then run our irrigation system, and we can watch the water start filling up right here. They recommend that you, in this area, water 1 inch a week. And we can see that 1 inch is going to take how long for our irrigation system to run. But the other part of that is is runoff occurring way before you get your 1 inch of water out. And so Fort Worth allows 2 days a week to water. So we could do, you know, a 1/2 inch one day and a 1/2 inch the other day that we're assigned to water. And that gives us our 1 inch of water if it will go into our clay soil. Now, planted beds are different. You keep a mulch layer there, did a lot of soil preparation there. So that's a little bit different. So the infiltration rate is a little bit higher. So more efficient, it's going to get the water in there. But the lawn area is where that clay is. You might have put a lot of compost down and tilled it in before you laid your sod down or seeded your sod, seeded your lawn, but it gets harder and harder and harder as we mow it and mow it and mow it and mow it. And so one of the things is we have to look at that infiltration rate into clay soil in a lawn area. And so this timing is very, very important. The other thing that these cups, well, if we put all 4 of these cups out in one area in our lawn, particularly where we have a hot spot occurs in an area where the irrigation system isn't covering it well by the 3 or 4 irrigation heads that should be covering that area. And then you get the sun hitting that spot and it grows very, very slow. Sometimes you even have it die out because it's not being covered by your irrigation system well. So we could put these out and about in that one zone. And so when we run it and we have one cup that is full and overflowing, and then we have another cup that barely has any water in it, well, guess what then? We don't have good coverage. We don't have good distribution. And so that's when we start looking at the nozzles and see if that may be one of the problems. But if we time this as we watch this fill up, or just run your irrigation system for 10 minutes, and then the math is easy to figure out how long you should run it to get your 1 inch. Okay, the next one is days to water. If you're allowed 1 day a week or you're allowed 2 days a week, this is very important for you to know what your city allows you to do so that you can do the conservation plan. Okay, then this is seasonal adjustment. Some of you, if you have an irrigation controller that's older than 15 years, maybe it's older than 20 years, I don't know, this might not be on there. And so seasonal adjustment gives you the capability. I turn my irrigation system off a lot. You know, if I see I don't need to irrigate, but I also depend on a rain and freeze sensor. So we're going to talk about this too. But what this allows you to do is if you're going to be traveling, particularly in the summer when you know we're going to need to irrigate, you might want to adjust that up to 100%. But if you're going to travel in the winter time when the plants don't need as much water as they need in the summertime, you might want to put that down to 40, 30%. And so if the irrigation system comes on, it's not putting out the gallons of water that it would put out during the summertime. It's doing a winter schedule without you having to go all through, you know, doing all the settings differently. It's a great, great, great advantage for you to have that. And if your irrigation controller doesn't have some of these things I'm showing you, this might be a great time to get a new irrigation controller with all these bells and whistles on it. And they now also have irrigation controllers that you can hook to your irrigation system. Same wires, you don't have to do any trenching. Same wires you take off your old system to put this on that are done through your phone. And so you can actually bring your schedule up here and adjust it there. So if you say, oh man, I'm in Timbuktu and it's raining in Fort Worth, cats and dogs, I can turn it off if it's scheduled to go on. But that's also what this rain and freeze sensor is about too, that we need to have on every system. So right here, it says manual 1 station. And so if I turn my dial to that, and then I turn it back to run, I have the advantage of pushing the number that I want to run. And so if I think there's a problem in zone 4, then I can put zone 4 up on the LED screen by pushing these arrows and plus and minus keys. And they're slightly different on each brand of controller. And then I can run that system, and it will automatically run it for 2 minutes, which gives you time to go check and see what's happening. The other one that I like is the manual all station. And if I turn my dial to there and then turn it to run, it's going to run every station for 2 minutes. And that gives me plenty of time to go and look for the nozzle problems we're going to look at and the leaky problems we're going to look at. And so that's such an advantage. And like I said, if you have an older controller that doesn't have these, might be time to get a new one. And then I might add right there that you could do this yourself. You go buy the new irrigation controller with all these bells and whistles on it, Rainbird, Toro, Irritrail, whatever brand you want, or the ones that you run from your cell phone. There's no bells and whistles on it. You do have everything from your mobile phone. And then it says off, and that's a huge advantage to some of us, that my rain and freeze sensor needs replacing. I haven't gotten the ladder out to disconnect the old one and put the new one up there, but it'll happen soon. I think I said that last year too, didn't I? Oh, well, we're our worst enemies sometimes. So buying a new controller, you use the same wires that are on the old controller, but you have to understand what zone that they go to. And so when you're doing this, you have to understand when you pull these wires off your old one, you can use a piece of masking tape or something to put zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, how many zones you have. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that inside here, that it has a reset button. So I know a couple of times, I know down at the church, the maintenance guy, number one, didn't know where the controller was because there was a shirt hanging on it and he had never thought to move that shirt. But who would think that someone would hang a shirt there? But when we found it, the schedule, Sam had done it, Mary had done it, Elizabeth had done it. It was so bad. So, because it kept coming on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the code enforcement kept saying, you got to fix your irrigation schedule. Well, anyway, so we hit that reset button, which sort of takes everything off, and then we could redo it. You don't often do that. That's very, very rare that you do that, but I want you to make aware of it. The other thing is you need to know is, this is your electrical supply, this is your ground, but in here, you also have what are called sensor screws. And I think those are right here. You got 2 of them right here. Does everybody see that? And these sensor screws are where you can hook your rain and freeze sensor. And the purpose of the rain and freeze sensor is to override your irrigation system coming on. If this cup has water in it, overrides it, because if this hasn't evaporated, the water in your soil most certainly hasn't evaporated. This is open to the air, evaporates very, very fast. And then it is also, if you look inside here, there's a little pointed thing, and that's your freeze sensor. And so if it's raining and your irrigation schedule to go on, it will not allow it to. And if it's freezing in your irrigation system is scheduled to come on, it will not allow it. It'll block it. And so this happens to be a cordless one, a wireless one, where this would be put up high somewhere that ambient rainfall could come into it. You don't want it under a tree. You don't want it on the eave of a house, so it might go on your guttering on your house, might go on your fence near your house. Mine's way on the top of my greenhouse, so that takes a tall ladder to get that. I need to do that. And then this, you screw or nail right near your controller, put this up through here, and then that's what you're going to hook to one of these sensor buttons. The reason why there's 2 sensors is there's also a moisture meter that you could put on there to override your irrigation system. And we'll show pictures and talk about that in a minute. So sprinkler too deep. I said it would be really, really good if we see the top of this, not high enough that our string trimmer or our mower will ever hit it, but just so the soil's about this level. Now, of course, the grass can get tall around it, but if we really, really look, we could see this. But you can see, I'm not going to scoot that grass blades away and see the top of it way, way too deep. And so what happens is soil can build up in your landscape by leaving your grass clippings on the ground and letting them decompose. Your leaves can be left on the ground and mowed up and left on the soil, and they filter down onto the soil. And so soil builds up, believe it or not, unless you have an erosion problem, which some of us do. And so one of the things that I want to show you are the neat tools that you can use to correct these problems. And so what I could do, particularly in a grass area like this, is I could take my sharpshooter shovel and make a donut of my grass that I'm cutting straight down, and then I could undercut it deep enough that I can literally pick it up like a donut and lay it to the side. And then what I'm going to have to do is dig down to this riser. You don't want any soil going into this riser, so it might behoove you, once you get your donut of sod put to the side, go ahead and dig all this out before you unscrew this. And eventually that's what you're going to do. You're going to unscrew this, and you want to buy not a new riser so that you have to dig way deep down to here, but you want one of these. I think this is $1.50, maybe $1.75 item. You can get it at any irrigation place. You can get it at Lowe's and Home Depot and hardware and feed stores that sell, and garden centers that sell irrigation supply. And if you look real carefully, I can cut it off right here. I can cut it off right here. So dependent, do I need 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 to get that at the right height, that it can distribute the water over all those grass clippings. And so I can put this here, or you're going to screw this down by hand, not with tools. And so we get that screwed on, and then we cut it. You know, maybe I just need 1 inch, maybe I need 2 inches, maybe I need all 3 inches, and then we can put this on top. And the only thing that saves you is not no digging, but it saves you not having to dig this deep all the way down to here. These are usually 12 inches deep, your lateral lines that put the water up here to get your pop-ups to pop up and sprinkle your lawn. So think about that. Real easy thing to do. Now we can go out and buy a taller riser and do that same thing, but if we get one that's too tall, guess what? This is not cut. We can't cut this off, whereas we can that smaller piece. You can get risers like this. And so I could get one and do this, and again, you could cut that off the way that you need to. The risers come in all different lengths. Some of them with the cutaways and some not. So you need to think about getting that up above the grass so the distribution of the nozzle is correct. Okay, now, is it a giveaway that when this pops up, I see grass clippings and leaf clippings on top of the nozzle? Yeah, I think so, that might be a little bit too deep. But look at the pattern. You see how it's broken all over? I mean, this should be full of water. This should be full of water. I guess this is a quarter circle one. And this is not good distribution. We're getting a lot of water out here, hardly any here, and none in this area, and this area. And when you do that poor distribution of water, even though in clay soil, water moves horizontally and it might be okay, but it might not be okay. And I'll tell you why. Because sometimes when the nozzles are doing this type of thing, you want to increase your run time, you know, to get those not wet areas wet. The best way you can do this is to replace that nozzle. Now, when you get ready to replace that nozzle, there's 2 things you have to take with you to Home Depot or Lowe's or an irrigation supply place. You have to know how far you want that water to be thrown, 8 feet, 50 feet, how far do you want to go? And then you have to know the pattern. Is it a quarter circle, half circle, full circle, or is it in a parkway and it shoots water out, you know, sideways, you know, like this, the nozzle goes side to side. So we have to know those things before we go buy the new nozzle. But also, before you buy the new nozzle, why don't you pull this up? Pull this up and see if you can clean the nozzle out and get it working properly. Try that first. Try that first. Okay, so here, this is Jimmy that works for the Fort Worth Water Department. He's pulling it up by his fingers. I always use a screwdriver, although I got to show you this tool right here. This is put out by Toro, but it's pretty universal that, okay, let me see if I can do this for you. It's pretty universal that if I could put this under here and I could grab the whole thing like this. Pretty cool tool to have. Okay, the other cool tool to have is this right here. This is bought at any sprinkler place that sells sprinklers. It's usually in a little plastic bag hung on the shelf somewhere. And once you get the nozzle up, if you need two hands to do all the work that you're required to do, the advantage of this is, that spring is really strong to pull that back down. The advantage of this is I'm very, very right-handed, so I'm going to have to get another one here. And so the advantage of this is that can hold it up for you. It's not like pliers, it's sort of reverse. So I get this up, and then I can pull this out. Remember, this is going to be underground, held in place for you. You're not going to need as many hands as I look like I'm using. But see, this can be open. Open. There's an adjustment screw like right here to tighten it or loosen it. And so I could put this right here, and it's going to hold the nozzle up, the riser up for me while I do my nozzle looking at. And so again, very, very important that, to make this easier for you to have some of these tools. Okay, now the other advantage of this is I take the nozzle off and I'm thinking that I have to, replace it or wash it out. And so I'm working real hard doing that. And all of a sudden that pops down. Oh my God. You see how strong that spring is to pop it up and pop it back down. How do I get it out? Well, look at this tool. You see how this is bent out? Really, really handy tool. And so what it's made to do is for you to stick it down in that riser and then squeeze it like a pair of pliers, and this can pull this out for you. Pretty, pretty handy tool. I think the last time I bought one, it's about $3.50. And so great, great, great advantage that you can have right there. Then the pour distribution, the cup thing again. But the other thing I want to point out to you here, see how far away this is popping up, and I flagged it with a flag behind it. See, it's not right up next to the curb or the sidewalk or your driveway or your roadway. And the new irrigation design rules say that, to put that 4 to 6 inches away, from any hard impervious surface, because that eliminates what we call the blowback. And so if that's right up next to the sidewalk or right up next to your driveway or right up next to your roadway, you're going to get a lot of blowback into the street, and it goes down the storm drain, unfiltered, untreated, to the nearest creek. But you still pay for it. And so it's very, very important that we think about this type of thing. And I'm going to show you how to move those in just a minute. But I want you to know, again, look at the distribution. Since this is near a sidewalk or a roadway, now you've got to realize that should be a half circle. There's no water coming out this way. And then look at this part right here, no water coming out. Little too deep, not enough to make a great, great difference, but it might be something you want to do. If you don't have enough of the cans or can't get by the library where your city might be putting these out for you to pick up, tuna cans. My grandkids eat tuna, and I save a lot of tuna cans, little dog food cans, cat food cans. These work really great. And so here's your sprinkler head. What you want to do, the rules of doing a real irrigation audit say put 9 out. But believe me, the 4 they give you are good enough to do the 2 things. Check the distribution and check the timing of how many inches per hour you're putting your water out, because that's what your irrigation rate is, inches per hour. And even though you might just run it for 10 minutes and you know how, I don't know how much water is going to be there, you can do the math by multiplying it and you can get the exact inches per hour of your rate. The other thing is a screwdriver. I keep 2 screwdrivers in my toolbox in my car, and one is the little short one, and I'll show you why, and then one is this. The advantage of this screwdriver, I want about a 6-inch, 8-inch screwdriver, pretty strong. I want to be able to stick it in the soil and pull it back up, and it's just like putting a toothpick in a cake, you know, to see if it's done. If it's wet, it's going to be very, very easy to put into the soil. If it's dry, you know you haven't irrigated enough. The depth that you can push this, if I can only push it 2 inches, then I only put 2 inches. That's how deep the water went. And so we have to understand the longer your grass roots are, your plant roots are going to do it, other plants, your shrubs, your ground cover, your trees, they're going to do it naturally. But your grass can go a longer period without irrigation, the longer the roots are. And the goal is to get the water down about 6 inches. And as the top of the soil dries out, guess what? The roots are going to go, man, it's too hot and dry up here. I think I'm going to grow deeper where there's more water. And that's the purpose of deep watering your grass areas. And so you can see all the clay all up and down that screwdriver. And that indicates to me, boy, I had a good irrigation. It went as deep as I could get it. Now, these are the problems we're going to look at. A misaligned head. It's not irrigating in the area you want it to irrigate. That's one problem in this picture. The other problem in this picture is it's raining. It's raining. You see the rain coming down, the clouds, you know, the street's wet everywhere, not just where the irrigation system is wetting the street. And then this is a poor design. You never, ever want a sprinkler system or a sprinkler head in a corner that close to a curb, okay? Because what's going to happen? You see, how many times is the irrigator going to be called and say, well, someone ran over it again. Well, someone ran over it again. Someone ran over it again. It's going to go on and on and on like that. And so all of these problems, you know, need to be corrected. And one of the easy ways of moving a sprinkler system or just refiguring the design is, what should happen here is there should be an irrigation head over this way covering this area. And then this is a triangle pattern. And then over here where no truck is going to run over it every week or every day and covering that same area. And then the third part of the triangle would be putting a head here to cover that same area. So in good irrigation designs, your heads are covering multiple areas. And so the new design is to have head-to-head coverage. And so this head that I, wait a minute, let me find this head that I put over here would be covering to this head over here, and this head would be covering to this head, and all of this would be covered. All of this would be covered. And you do that by selecting the right type of nozzles that will throw the water you want it to throw, and to throw the distance, the pattern and the distance, what you want to throw. Because if I have to replace a nozzle, because it's just no good anymore, you know, that's what I'm going to look at when I go to the store. I'm going to look at that this throws the water 18 feet, and this is a full circle pattern. And so those are the things you're going to have to look for to do this yourself. Okay, now, one of the things we have to talk about is property management. These are 2 commercial areas, and you can see across the street, it's being beautifully, beautifully managed. On this side of the street towards the camera, It's not being beautifully managed, and it's a poor design. So let's talk about other things. This, you see, this zone is a whole front yard, a little landscape. Oh, wait a minute. In a little landscape. So if I go up here, where's my pointer? Right here, you can see one head running and one head, not much coverage, because this head down here that should be covering this whole area right here is not popping up, but the water's pouring out of it. And when something like that happens, a leak like this, or even one that doesn't pop up, it changes the pressure within the zone pipes, within the lateral pipes. And so you're getting a little bit of water at the top of the hill, but not as much as you need. And so this type of thing needs to be repaired. And so when we move back, this is a neighbor, 98-year-old lady. Of course, she didn't have a landscape company that had an irrigator on their staff, so they didn't, bother her about it, but needs to check this. And so you can see the water pouring out in the storm drain. We moved back the thing and we saw that it wasn't popping up correctly because the cap wasn't on tight. And, we just screwed that cap on there very, very tightly, and the pressure built up and everything ran correctly. But this is something maybe you can fix yourself that you don't want to call the irrigator for. Now, broken pipe sometimes is obvious, sometimes it's not. It depends on you seeing that. I know this one lady in one town got $1,000 water bill, and she called customer service and said, oh my gosh, there has to be a mistake. And when they sent the water department to reread her meter, and they said, no, that's how much water you use. And they told her how to check for leaks in the indoors and go look for wet areas in your landscape outdoors. Well, if the break is in your main line, there's always water in that main line, always water under pressure in that main line, and it will be leaking all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. And sometimes big geysers coming up. But if it's in your lateral line where your sprinkler heads are, it only shows you that it's broken or leaking when it comes on. And so no one explained that to the lady. Well, when finally, they got an irrigation person over there, they had 4 heads that had been run over by a mower service. And she said she had just changed mower services, save a little bit of money, and they must have run over those heads. 4 heads. Can you imagine how much water? Well, in a month, it was 1,000 gallons had escaped, and yet here she needs to be paying for it. Now, fortunately, that water department worked it out for her. But this is something we all need to be able to check. Now, this is only when that zone is on that you're going to discover this. This is in what we call the parkway. You can see the street is right out here. Look how much water is coming out of there into the street. You can see it's messed up this whole landscape area. Here's the sidewalk. Here's the street. Here's the muddy, muddy clay pouring into that street. The only reason I discovered this is because there's a school right around the corner. I was going to check their school garden. They said they had a leak in their irrigation system in their school garden. And I saw this happening, and I was like, oh my gosh. The kids come down that street on their bicycles or even walking, and boy, they're going to jump at that mud, and mamas are going to get real mad. Not at the kids, but whoever is allowing this to happen. But also, even when that dries out, it's a pedestrian hazard. It's also a vehicle hazard. So if someone comes into that water and skids, they're in trouble. But even when it dries, it's clay, and that clay will stay there for a long, long time till it blows away with the wind. And it's always, always slippery when it's wet, more so than when it's dry, but it is slippery. If a vehicle or a pedestrian accident happens, either because a leak like this or your irrigation comes on when it's freezing and there's ice on the sidewalk or ice on the driveway or the road or in a parking lot, you are liable for those accidents that occur. The owner of the irrigation system is liable for those. And so it's very, very important that we know how to prevent this thing from happening. So that's how the after the rotor went down, this is how it looked. Okay, head not vertical, straight up and down. So what? You know, it's putting water out, right? No, that's not right. Because look at what has happened in this area. Do you see the soil, nice, good soil that you probably put there with a lot of compost and the clay? You know, it's all eroded. It's all gone. All the plants are gone, you know, because of the erosion that occurs because the sprinkler system, instead of putting the water out this way, is putting the water out this way. And so it's flooding this area. It's not getting the plants out here like it should. Of course, you know, if the system is right, you've got an overlapping head, but still that needs to be corrected. And so you can moisten the soil and maybe pull it back in place, or you might have to dig around and get it pulled back in place. Every now and then you have a real stubborn one. And unfortunately, you know, there's a chance that you might break the connection here. Where's the one I was going to hold up for you? The connection right here. And that's, here it is. That's unfortunately if you do this, because like I said, these are glued. You're not going to break this where it's threaded in there. But if that does happen, there's a type of PVC pipe glue called blue glue. It's supposed to work when it's wet, you know, and sometimes you can dig a little bit under here in order to get that blue glue to scrape it into that pipe. And maybe that will correct it also if that happens. If that doesn't happen, unfortunately, you're going to have to cut pipe and replace that, or cap this one off and add one further down. Low pressure. Low pressure, I showed you where that one head wasn't popping out, yet all the water was coming out. That was the lowest head in that zone. And so here we have something very similar. We have the slope, and all of these heads are running, but not well. They're not irrigating the way they are designed to irrigate. And then we have the land manager has put gator bags around here. Now, there's two things that are happening here. Number one, the horticulture company, the landscape maintenance company that is going to this site should have recognized what's going on. And they either have an irrigator on their staff that can come and fix this, or the land manager. Well, I don't know how long this had been going on because, gosh, they put gator bags around the tree. You can see we have an area dying out right here and here. And so I stopped and reported it to the nearest storefront there and asked to speak to the manager and explain the situation. And I said, when I parked on the other side of this berm, because the main road is on the other side of the sidewalk and the parking lot is over here on the other side of the berm, and I saw a stream of water going down through the parking lot. And I explained to him, you probably have low pressure here because you have a leak somewhere and all the water is going down in your parking lot instead of in your pipes to irrigate properly. And you know what the manager said to me? I was real surprised. He said, you know, I always wondered where that water was coming from. If you see water running, there's a leak, there's a break, there's something happening. You need to check it out, because every bit of water that was going through that parking lot, he's paying for. Of course, now, he didn't own the land. Someone in New York City did, and they were getting the water bill. How do they know there's a break? You know, you've got to check, 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 check. Sunken head, again, you can see you're not getting the distribution of the water correct. And so that's when you're going to have to go in and sort of dig around that head and get one of these devices in order to correct that. And this can be a big problem, and you can get hot spots and wet spots due to this. Now, in this case, the irrigation head is too high. In this case, it's a rotor, and whereas your spray nozzles might be putting water out at 5 gallons a minute, man, this is putting it out more like 20 gallons a minute. And so you've got to look at that. Oh my gosh, Why is that so high? Well, I can tell you right now, because I work with irrigation heads enough to know that probably blew off of there. And someone saw it laying there and screwed it back on. But meanwhile, while it blew out of there, the riser was, oh man, throwing water out everywhere, and therefore made a little volcano effect around that riser. And in most cases, all that has to be done here is that hole that it created be filled in. Now, if you're going to fill in a hole like that, you want to use sand, because sand doesn't, you know, disappear like compost. You wouldn't use compost, you'd use sand. You can see this. This is an flag. It doesn't have to be an irrigation flag, but a flag. And I know probably the mower put that flag there. So when he's mowing, he's not going to hit that head because he doesn't want to be, you know, blamed for the problem. But this needs to be taken care of. And if you have a situation like that too. Now, is this a broken nozzle or a broken head? Did the head pop off? The sprinkler head. Did the sprinkler head get thrown off of there because it wasn't tightened down good, or it's been untightened on the riser by it being hit by a string trimmer, pedestrians walking on that sidewalk, the kids going with their skateboards and bicycles and tricycles. Yeah, I don't know why it happened, but look right there. What do you see right there? There's the sprinkler head right there. And so it's real easy to pick that up and screw that back on. Now, when the water's running like this, you're going to get very wet if you do it. And if you let the water stop running, you might be able, the riser disappears down, you know, into the sprinkler head. The riser, this riser right here is below. And so you might get some soil in here. So it's almost better if you do it while it's running, not while it's not on. And so you have to realize how much digging do you want to do. It's always better to dig in moist clay soil, not dry clay soil, because it's too hard, a lot of work, but needs to be done. And so if you don't mind getting wet, just pick that up and screw that back on. Now, every now and then, it's a nozzle that's been thrown off for some reason. And if it's a nozzle that's been thrown off, that's a little bit harder to find in an area. Not impossible by any means. But again, you've got to get that screwed down in there. And then guess what? You have to check that it's facing the right direction. So a nozzle right here on that corner would be a quarter pattern, a quarter circle pattern. And so you also have to determine what the throw, how far the water needs to be thrown. Now, when you think about this, sometimes the markings are on here about where the pattern, the water is going to be thrown, but most of the time that is worn off. And so what we have to do then is turn it on to make sure it's going to throw the water out the right way. But one of the things you can do is not readjust this so it throws it the right way, but this riser. Now listen to this. Do you see I'm turning it this way or I'm turning it this way, you know, in order to get it done. And of course, if you do this while the water's running, you might get a little bit wet, but that's okay. At least you know it's going to be facing the right direction and not wetting that sidewalk down. Now, when you do this, you might accidentally loosen this cap. So after you get the water flowing or distributing in the right direction, make sure that you didn't loosen this cap while you were doing that. All of these things you can do yourself. See, the same thing here. You know, now I don't see the sprinkler system, the sprinkler head, but what do I see? I see a wet parking lot. And it's not because of the water coming out of that missing sprinkler head. It is raining. It's raining. We've got to use a rain and freeze sensor to prevent this type of thing. Now here, I see the irrigation system is on, but I see lots of problems here. The number one thing, I see it's not sprinkling. It's misting. The problem with putting mist out instead of sprinkles out is that's a lot of that's going to blow away, maybe as much as 50% if the wind is blowing, and a lot of it's going to evaporate because of the fine particles of water, the fine droplets of water. You want it sprinkling. You want it looking like rain going through your landscape. This is usually caused by too high a pressure. But I can also see that they re-landscape this area, and all of this, the sidewalk's over here, all of this is getting all over the sidewalk. And why did they leave that head there when they put composted granite right here? So I see a lot of problems with that, but the main thing is the misting instead of sprinkling. Now, you can have a leaky valve. You know, when the valve leaks, that's a whole other problem because we have water going out and out and out. And usually when a sprinkler system, the valve, the controller says turn off that zone, the lowest head in that zone might leak for a little while, and then it stops because this seeps down with the O-ring in here, and it stops the water from leaking. The pipe, the little bit that's in that lowest head will leak out, but it should stop. Now, what happens is this O-ring doesn't seep down good, and you have a constant leak, and that's what's happening here. And there happens to be two heads near this fence and sidewalk, and they're both the lowest heads, and so they're just constantly leaking. Now, if you'll look at this, can you see this? You see these screws right along here? One of the things you can do is unscrew these and lift this up very carefully and take a wet rag and clean out in there where the O-ring is, and put it back together and try it again to see if it still leaks. That might correct it because it has some sand in there and it's not seating down real well. Or you can go to the irrigation supply choice of your choice, and you can buy a new one like this. It comes in a package. They're pretty universal. This happens to be a rainbow diaphragm, but it will usually fit all of them. Keep your receipt, keep the packaging just in case, but this is what you need to look at for this type of thing. And if you can see this, I told my daughter I needed a picture of this, and I knew exactly where, you know, a couple of them, I witnessed a couple of them, but I hate to tell you, I'm a nosy person, and I went into the business where this was occurring and told the manager what was going on 3 months before I took the picture. And my daughter kept saying, no, man, they fixed it. You told them to fix it. They fixed it. Well, they hadn't fixed it. And the problem with this is this constant linking here is a pedestrian hazard, bicycle hazard, number one, tricycle, you know. But the other thing is, if you look real carefully, you can see that smooth concrete top, it's being eroded. It's going to start breaking up, and we see this a lot with leaky and problem irrigation system. Now the valve box a little bit different because usually it's not leaking in the valve box itself, it's leaking where the sprinkler heads are still allowing the water to go through. But if a valve box fills up like this, oh man, I ran into this last time. I'm sorry. Why am I getting... Last time I ran into that low battery thing, I didn't plug it in good. Let me check my plug real quick. Oops, yeah, I don't know why I'm not strong enough to get that in. Okay, and so now it's in. And so we want to look at all of these different things that I want to share with you about sprinkler systems. Let me go back to that point where I was. Am I going the wrong way? Yep. Okay, so we've got to constantly check this. So I think what's happening now, this is probably a very old system, and what's happening here is water is accumulating in the valve box. This could also be your backflow prevention box. But what happens is you need to find out why that's watering. When they install those boxes, they put what we call a sump below it. They dig deeper than the box needs to be, and that allows water to go and drain through the gravel that they put down there. And if it's very long time, you probably have got it stopped up with the finer soil particles of the clay. Okay, high pressure again, we've got to figure out why that's high pressure. There's two things you have to look at when you get this situation. And like on that last picture, is it just that one zone, or is it the whole sprinkler system, every single zone doing this? Because what you need is a pressure regulator right when it comes out of your backflow prevention device for the whole system. Or if it's just one zone, you need it after, not before, but after your irrigation valve. And the reason why this is so important for you to understand, if it doesn't need to be on the whole irrigation system, you don't want it there by your backflow prevention device because you might lower it. The pressure is regulated. It's a mathematical formula of hydraulics. You know, how big do the pipes need to be? How long does a pipe need to be? Every one of the fittings has to be taken into account. All of this reduces or puts resistance on the water flowing through the pipe. So there's a mathematical formula to figure that out. Now, this irrigator might have been the best math in the world, the best design. Everything was really, really good. But maybe the pressure changed in the line coming to the house. So there's all different kinds of ways, but we can't allow that to continue because of the evaporation. Is any of this water going to hit the ground? I don't think so. I don't think so. But it's going to blow away if the wind's blowing, or it's going to evaporate. Now I'm showing this picture, and I'm showing it along the curb because one of the things when they passed the new irrigation rules and water conservation rules here in Fort Worth, they said you're not allowed to allow your irrigation water to run into a storm drain. Now you can see what they have done. They've designed it so these are not right next to the curb. That's good because your string trimmer's not going to hit them, your mower's not going to hit them. You know, someone walking along with their dog and they're not going to hit them. And so one of the things we have to think about is that's wetting the storm drain, but water is not running down it. So you have to very much understand the rules and regulations of the cities and what they want to do. So this is actually pretty good design, but do you see that this nozzle right here might need to be cleaned out? This nozzle right here might need to be cleaned out. There's a couple of things happen. Yes, the pressure looks a little bit too high, but not like those other pictures I was showing you where it's almost a mist instead of a sprinkle. Okay, this is another problem we have in narrow areas, you know, like in the parkway in front of your house. That's the area of landscaping between your sidewalk and your roadway. This is a medium. And they've got these huge pop-ups that are popping up and putting water everywhere. You can see all that water is going out in the street, creating a vehicle hazard and maybe even a pedestrian hazard. And so you don't want to do the same thing. So the new irrigation rules passed in 2009, believe it or not, called that all new irrigation systems being installed put in drip irrigation anywhere like this, where it's a narrow area and it's on impervious pavement on both sides. And so a lot of cities are going back to mediums like this and installing a drip irrigation. All future mediums, all future parkways, new homes, new irrigation system will be putting in drip irrigation. Drip irrigation applies water at very low pressure and underneath the mulch, so it's out of sight. If it's maintained real well, you get a better irrigation because of it and not all that water flowing out. Now, this is a leaky cap I was telling you about, and this it just needs to be, it doesn't need to be replaced. It just needs to be tightening. And so watch for this. You're not going to see it this way, of course, because most of that's going to be underground. But if you see an irrigation head where the grass is growing there much more differently than it's growing everywhere else, I guarantee you've got a leak somewhere creating that better growth there. Poor design, poor maintenance. Well, what is this? It might be a little bit of both, but it's definitely poor maintenance. So what other company has a contract to mow this area should have seen that and gotten it fixed, or reported to the landowner so they could get it fixed immediately, because you can see this beautiful green area, and on the other side over here, you're not getting good distribution, good coverage. What is this? Irrigation hitting a fence or a building causes calcium to collect on the fence or the building. And I guarantee you that fence is going to wear out way, way, way before the fence person said it was going to, because of that constant pressure of the water hitting it and that calcium building up on it. It's very important if you see something like this against a building, against your house, against your fence, you know, anywhere like that, that you recognize it for what it is and get that irrigation system water from going onto that fence, because you're going to be paying for it much, much more than you really had planned on paying for it if you had budgeted to replace that fence in 20 years instead of 5. So you've got to look at these things. So what may be happening here is the irrigation heads, instead of being put this way to throw the water this way, they didn't want to get water on the sidewalk, so they may have put the irrigation heads on this side, throw the water this way, and that's why you've got those scalloped effects of the calcium accumulating on that fence. Now, did I tell you that your irrigation heads or your nozzles can be bought by the distance it throws? And so whatever this distance is, we can get 3 feet nozzles. It's only going to throw the water 3 feet. We can also convert that whole area into drip irrigation by either going into the valve box and putting a pressure regulator and drip irrigation filter in the valve box. We could convert one of the heads by putting a drip irrigation converter, replacing the regular sprinkler head with a drip irrigation converter. There's several ways you can do this. Same out here, same out here. Now, if we're going to think about doing this ourselves, one of the things I want to introduce you to is what's called a swing arm. I don't want to do a lot of trenching when I move my heads because they're in the wrong place. So I'll give you an example. Because of a live oak tree and the placement of the side of my house, my entrance into my driveway and garage is 1 car. But then when it gets up by the garage, it comes out to where 2 cars can park side by side, and the garage is a 2-car garage. And it's got a curb along between where you come onto it, and then when you almost get to the carport that's there in front of the garage, but it loses its curb there. And so consequently, the head that was there right by my sago palm, you know, kept getting run over by someone. And the second time I happened, I said, it's not going to happen a third time. And so this is something you, again, can do yourself. I was going to try to separate this so I can demonstrate it better. And so there's 2 ways I can do this. One way is I can dig all the way down to here, and I get the swing arm. Do I want to move it 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches? And I could put this down on here, and then I can move my head to over there, 6 inches. The other way you could do it is just dig this deep, and this is what is called a coupling. It's an all-thread coupling. And so I could do it this way. I could dig down to the top of the riser, not all the way down to the PVC lateral line, and I can put this all-thread here and get it on this riser, and then I can dig a little trench. How far do I want to move it? 6 inches, the width of the tire that keeps hitting it, or, you know, what do I want to do to get it away from any curb that gets a blowback? You know, I can put the swing arm on here and move it the distance I need to move it. Does that look easy to do? Something you can do? I think so. And then your head would be moved over to here where it wouldn't get run over. This is true, the corner of your driveway and your roadway, a lot of times that one gets hit also. Not a good place to put a sprinkler head, but it is done. And I showed you the pictures on those commercial sites where it's done. The other opportunity that you have is what is called, it's called funny pipe. Funny pipe. And the funny pipe, the same thing, instead of going all the way down here, which is a possibility, I could get an all thread and put it here. And then I can put this, dig a trench and put this here, and then put my irrigation head on this. Does that look like something you all can do? And this, you can get these in the different lakes, just like you can get the swing arms. And so these are your choices in order to move that, not have to trench, not have to cut PVC pipe in order for you to do it yourself to move that head. Now, if I was going to do this here, the other thing that I want to tell you about are the different type of nozzles. We've talked about the pattern that they do and the distance of the throw that they do. So if I was going to move those heads into the middle of these two, lawn areas on either side of this is called the parkway. And this is, a lot of new places are not having a parkway. They put the sidewalks right next to the road. But if I was going to do this, we have to look at the different heads that are available and adjusting the heads. So first of all, I want you all to notice that in the nozzle, there is a flathead screw slot that you can do. Oh, this is a Phillips. Okay, let me say flathead and then hold up a Phillips one. Okay, so you can see that nozzle right there. And I can put this Phillips screwdriver in there. I mean, flathead screwdriver. I could put it in here and I could turn it to the right or clockwise. And that is going to tighten this screw down and lengthen the throw. Think in terms of it like you're watering with your garden hose and you can't quite reach something over there, and you put your thumb on it tight so that you build up the pressure in the garden hose and it sprays over there. Or I can also turn it counterclockwise and shorten the throw so it won't hit the fence, so it won't hit my driveway. And so this is something you can do. It doesn't do a lot, but it can do make up to a foot difference. Of course, the manufacturer can tell you that. But this is what I wanted you to look at. Now, nozzles aren't universal, but mainly they're universal in that they're going to throw, if this is a hunter head and I put a rainbow nozzle on here, it's going to fit that way. Unless you have a very, very old system, because most of the risers now are what we call male threading. But long time ago, that wasn't universal, and some of them had female threading. And so when you go to buy your nozzle, you need to understand, do you have a female or male threaded in that riser that comes up from here? That's where you need to check, not this riser necessarily. So what is the distance of the throw? Here's 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, and it goes higher and higher. And then the pattern that you need. Remember, you don't want water going out the street or on your sidewalk or over your driveway or onto your driveway, hitting the side of your house, sitting the side of your fence. So we have the option of replacing nozzles that are causing any of those problems and with what really needs to be there. So in a parkway like that, or in a little strip like that close to the house, what you need, that nozzle is not on this diagram, so that's why I'm showing you. You need a nozzle that throws water out this way and throws water out this way. It's designed for parkways and narrow areas where it's not going to do a full circle, half circle, quarter circle. It's going to go to either side. And that's what you want in those narrow places. And therefore that fence won't get hit anymore and start deteriorating. Now, new technology as far as nozzles go, you can see the spray nozzle on the top picture, but look at the different nozzle at the bottom. This is called a multi-stream rotor, and it's just a nozzle change. Do you see the nozzle and the filter in there? It's just a nozzle change. And I would be doing the same thing. You have, if you're going to change to these type of nozzles, you have to change the whole zone out. A lot of times you see these in lawn areas, not necessarily, or in ground cover beds, not necessarily in your narrow shrub beds or flower beds. But what this does is it puts the water out in a rotor type motion. It puts the water out a little bit flatter, and it puts it out in heavier droplets. And so therefore you can get up to 30%, 33% more efficiency out of these. Now, in order to change your lawn area to these type of nozzles instead of the spray nozzles, you have to do your homework first. You have to get a paper and pencil out and you tape measure. You have to know the distance between the heads, and then you have to understand you need half circle, quarter circle, full circle nozzles. And you would do that by what's already there. So that's easy. You can draw a little diagram, doesn't have to be drawn to scale, little diagram on your sheet of paper and number each of your heads, turn it on, see what the patterns are, full circle, half circle, quarter circle, see what the patterns are, and then measure, after you turn it off, then measure the distance between the heads. And then you go by these according to the notes that you have taken. And you've numbered the heads, and you're going to remember, you know, which heads are which, and then you're going to insert these in. Now, again, just like changing any nozzle out, you're going to have to turn it back on and make sure that it's facing the right direction that it needs to be facing. Now, the other new technology that a lot of people are switching to, particularly in their planted beds, not necessarily in the lawn area, but I will show you how it can be done in a lawn area, to drip irrigation. Drip irrigation can bring your efficiency up to 90% in our clay soils, particularly because it puts water out under low pressure, drip, 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 drip. And because of a low infiltration rate of clay soil, guess what? You get water in there more efficiently into the soil where the roots need to be growing. In a lawn area, like in your parkway or in your lawn area, in your front yard, backyard, it needs to be subsurface irrigation so that your mower doesn't suck the tubing up into the mower and chop it up for you. And so there's a little trencher. Right now, these are not rentable from places like Home Depot or other rental places, but most of the irrigators that owns one of these will rent them out to you. It's a big investment for an irrigation company to purchase these. So if you want to do it yourself, you could rent it from them. You mark your area on your, this is a parkway between the sidewalk and roadway. You mark it 6 inches in. Most of the drip irrigation tubing is going to have the drippers every 6 inches, what are called in-line drippers every 6 inches. And we can get away with putting those 6 inches from both our curves and then 12 inches apart. And so literally you're going to have this dripping every 6 inches. Even though it's 12 inches apart in clay soil, the water goes horizontally, so it works really, really well. Once you get the trench did, you put in subsurface drip irrigation tubing and hold it down there with your landscape pins. Those will rust away eventually, but they're great to hold it down. You don't want those coming back up. Now, in order to do this, you can convert one of your existing heads and cap all the others off, because you can't run drip irrigation, spray nozzles, or rotors at the same time. Cap this off. There's a little cap that's right on top of here. And inside the valve box or right here, you need a little converter package. And the little converter package goes after your valve. This needs the regular 30 PSI pressure, 60 PSI pressure coming through here. So does that look good? This is about 1 week after installation. You can see where the trenching is. You can see where the valve box is, where they put the drip irrigation pressure regulator and the filter. And so this is Zoysia Palisade. This was done in the spring, so it's very, very, very nice looking very quickly. Other new technology that you might want to look at is a soil moisture reader. Precision agriculture has been depending on this for decades. And the moisture sensors that they use have been very expensive for decades, but well worth it for an agricultural crop. Toro and a couple of other companies have put in these type. This is a wireless soil moisture reader. It puts a little tiny electrical between the two times that you put down in there. And according to what that reads up into this that you attach to your irrigation controller on one of those sensor buttons we showed you that's in your irrigation controller, then you can be override. You can program it to override your system going on if it's still wet down here. Okay, the other one is ET controllers. Evapotranspiration stands for water evaporating from your soil and transpiring from your plants. That's right, your plants sweat just like we do. The hotter it is, the drier the humidity is, that's going to happen to you. And so we have an ET weather stations all over Tarrant County that the Tarrant Regional Water District has put up for you. If you sign up to get their weekly emails about how much you need to water, that's information is coming from that weather station closest to your address. Really, really nice. Because you know how the Metroplex is. We might have a storm coming in and it turns east and everyone on the northeast side of the Metroplex get water, or it might go south and come through the south side of the Metroplex because of our heat bubble. And so, you know, one area might get an inch of water and the other area didn't get any water. And so it's very important to sign up for those if you'd like to do that. An ET controller can have the weather station on site, or it can use historic data, or it can wirelessly speak to ET weather station. And that overrides, you know, if you don't need to irrigate, but it also can adjust your run times for you. Okay, so here is the new type of caps that they're putting on a lot of them. It's called pressure regulated sprinkler. I regulated sprinkler heads. And these are made of a harder material so they don't get cracked as easy. And it regulates a head pressure. And so instead of going into your system and putting a pressure regulator here, it's going to be regulated right here. And so that is an expensive change out because of all the holes you have to dig and buying all of these, but it's well worth it if the pressure is a problem. Otherwise, you need to get one of these pressure regulators and put it right. If it's a whole system that has too high a pressure, you put it by the backflow prevention knife. If it's just one zone, you put it on the water delivery side of your valve. Okay, now rotors are a little bit different. Rotors are made to irrigate very, very large area. You see them on parks, you see them on athletic fields, you see them on businesses that have very, very, very large turf areas and landscaped areas, and not for flower beds, shrub beds, ground cover beds necessarily, but this is the type of thing you want. Now, I want you to see this right here. This is like a nozzle. This is like a nozzle, and because that is like a nozzle, it's going to regulate some of the distance the water is thrown and the pattern that it's putting out. And so we can, I don't have the little plastic tool, I've got the screwdriver tool, so I can put this in here and turn it, you know, just 90 degrees, and then you can pull up your rotor. Remember, you're not going to be holding it, the ground's going to be holding it, and the pipe's going to be holding it for you. And I can check, okay, I can check what type of nozzle is in there. And a lot of time that nozzle, it determines whether it's going to fan the water out, where it's going to be a big long stream. There's all types of things you can do there. That nozzle is held into place by this little screw. Where's my pointer? This little screw right here. And that screw can also be put down a little bit further in order to fan out the pattern of the water going out. So if you look right here, do you see that screw right there? And you see the fitting that I have in there. And so this one, oh, the number says, does this say 20 on it? Okay, so no, it says 30. And so that's going to throw my water out 30 feet. Now, a lot of us won't have a landscape where we need the water to be thrown out 30 feet, but a lot of athletic fields and park departments will use nozzles to throw it out 75 feet or 100 feet or 150, even 200 feet. A lot of this is due to the pressure capability of these. And so that has to be determined by your irrigator or you know, what exactly you need there. So I can take my tool out of here, and then I can also put it in here. If I put it in, this is the area where I had it, where I could pull it up to see it. Check it. Does everybody see that right there? Okay, this part right here, I can put it in to unscrew that out of the stream of water and the nozzle, or I can tighten it down to go into the stream of water and hold that better. Okay, there's another thing right here. Some of them will have you adjust the pattern, you know, with another area. It'll probably say plus and negative, you know, or some of them adjust like this. Now listen to this. Can you hear? You hear that turning? And so I can turn it till it stops. Okay, now what I can do now, because this is a 360 one, I can start turning it away from that stop and determine. So this would be 90 degrees. That would be a quarter circle. I could go even further. That would be 180 degrees. That would be half circle. You know, I can do it all the way to this stop, and then that would be 360. And so these are very adjustable. You don't need to necessarily know a great deal about this, because if you do have these rotors, one of the things that you need to understand is this is Toro. I think I have a Hunter one here. You know, there are different manufacturers of these, and every single one of the manufacturer, yeah, here's a Hunter one. Every single one, see, this says Toro on it. Can you see that? And every one of these manufacturers of these will have a tutorial on their website about how to adjust these. So if they do get turned around and hit, and it's watering the street instead of your landscape, they're gonna show on their website exactly how to correct that. And you can do it yourself. You can start turning it and do it yourself. Sometimes the the first stop is on the left side. Sometimes it's on the right side, and the instructions will tell you that. This is a tree of nozzles that come with it, and I thought I put that on my table to show you. Some of them have very large holes. Some of them have very small holes. And again, I'm going to remind you of the aspect of when you put that finger, when you put your finger on your garden hose. So if I have a small hole, it's going to build more pressure. If I have a very large hole, it's going to feel less pressure. So look at these two. You see this big one compared to the smaller one, and probably they're even smaller than that. Let me show you. See how small that one is. And so you need to make sure that any of this that comes with your rotors that you have, you know, put in a baggie, put all your irrigation parts and pieces together in one place so you can go back to them, especially these little screwdrivers and the little plier-like thing. Very, very, very handy to know exactly where those are when you need it. So you can look right here, the pattern, all of it needs the same 30 PSI pressure, just like your spray nozzles do. But what matters is this, the gallons per hour. So if I have a full circle one, this is gallons per minute of water. If it's not working right, that's what I'm going to be losing. Very important to watch this. Now, the other thing I might add right here is the zone. You can't have spray nozzle, spray sprinklers, and you can't have rotors in the same zone because their run times are going to be different by the amount of water they're putting out inches per gallon. Okay, now setting your controller for what we call cycle and soak irrigation. And this is where that start times comes out. And so if I go my dial to that starts time, and I'm going to adjust that for my first run time. And so let's say I want that to come on at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I do my run time and say I have put my catch cans out, and I figure out that for half an inch, I need to run them for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, you know, depending on the plant water requirements also. And so I can set that run time for each of my zones. Then I can go back to start times, and I can use my arrows and up and down keys to go to a second start time. It will say that 2ND, second start time. And then I can set that. And so if I have 5 zones and I'm going to run them 5 or 10 minutes a piece, then I can do that math, and I can see how long it'll take that first start time to run my whole irrigation system. Then I can think in terms of that amount of time, say 10 minutes, so that's 60 minutes, started at 3 o'clock, and I want the clay soil to have the time to get the water as deep and as wide as possible. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to think I want to wait 30 minutes to an hour between cycles. Started at 3 o'clock, it runs for an hour, that brings it to 4 o'clock. And then if I wait an hour, that brings to 5. But you know, I get up at 5, and I would like to see that second run so I can make sure I have no leaks and nozzles and everything going all right. So I'm setting it for 6 o'clock in the morning. So I probably already had my Monster drink and my toast and peanut butter, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to see it running, you know, the second time. And so this is very important for you all to understand. The other thing about it is every one of these have those instructions in the owner's manual. You don't have the owner's manual, you can go to their website and get a copy of it, or you can call their 1-800 number and stand in front of the controller with your cell phone or your cordless phone from your house and say, I want to set up a soak and cycle schedule. This is what I figure my run time needs to be. And you can set all of this. And if you're going to do 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 3 cycles, 4 cycles, you set your run time with what you determine with your cups, what it needs to be. And then the cycles adjust that. So if you set it for 2 cycles and you figure they need to run for 10 minutes, first cycle is going to run it for 5. And then, you know, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, it's going to run it again for 5 minutes. Or if you want 10 minutes each cycle, you know, you can do that. Remember, every zone does not require the same amount of run time. You know, your ground covers and shady areas, you know, we use a lot of ground covers and shady areas because our turf grass doesn't hold our soil real well. They don't need as much water. If they're newly planted, they do. But remember, you can mulch ground cover, and that helps hold the soil from evaporating from the soil. The shade has it dry out slower than sunny areas. You know, there's all kinds of things that you have to think of when you're trying to determine. Just running your sprinkler, measuring it in your cup is one way to figure out the run time. For the plant water requirements, the sun or shade, and being able to mulch the area or not. So my shrub bed area, my foundation planting around my house, mainly shrubs, you know, and that's to keep that foundation from shifting with the shrinking and swelling soil. That's why we call it a foundation planting. And so if I mulch that every spring and every fall, that mulch is going to decompose and become part of the soil. And that's going to allow the infiltration rate to be quicker. So I get more water in at a faster rate down to the root area. And it's going to allow the water to evaporate at a much slower rate because of that mulch on top of the soil underneath. So just think in terms of mulching all your flower beds, all your vegetable gardens, all your ground cover beds. Your lawn, you can mulch by putting out compost, maybe, you know, about the 4th or 5th mowing in the spring. But remember, you know, that if you aerate first, it's even better, by the way, on clay soil. But, you know, that is not as easy. But practicing, don't bag it. Leave your grass clippings on your lawn. They will filter through the glass blades and onto it. We don't have a lot of thatch buildup in our area. It just decomposes so fast. Irrigation regulations are done by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And if you have any questions about where a person really is a licensed irrigator, they have a website you can go to. They also have a number you can call to make sure the irrigator is licensed. You can also call your city's code enforcement, and they can help you with those issues too. Your research, of course, is your city's water utility website. They're going to have a lot of things there, you know, about your irrigation rules, about the water conservation plan, landscape water conservation plan, things like that. And if we ever have to go into water restrictions due to drought or broken pipes, it'll have that there too. Save Tarrant Water is one run by Tarrant Regional Water District. Waterisawesome.com. This is done by all the large water utility, Tarrant Regional Water District, Dallas Water Utility, North Texas Municipal Water District. And so this is a huge website, and they all go in together to help you. I'm sure you've seen the commercials on TV right now, really artistically done commercials, really nice. Water University is Texas A&M site at the Dallas Research and Extension Center. And this is where you can go for landscape design information, plant selection information, and of course, Aggie horticulture. You can do that there with their Earth Kind landscaping program, same thing. Back in 1999, I helped write the Texas Smartscape program, and it was mainly about landscape water conservation by plant selection. And so lots and lots of pictures there, same with the Water University website. The other thing, Advantage Water University website, besides all the wonderful plant pictures they have templates for water, landscape design. You know, if you need a parkway design, or you need the corner over here design, they have templates and plant selections that you could put in there. They also have this wonderful book. This is called Water Efficient Irrigation, Water Efficient Landscaping in North Central Texas. A lot of the stuff that I talked about today, like your moisture sensors, your rain and freeze sensor, drip, converting to drip, a lot of that in your site scheduling, a lot of that is in this booklet. Normally, if we were meeting in person, we'd be handing you this and the cups and a rain gauge, you know, so you can know exactly how much it rained in your area. This is available at the Water University website. You can download it and save it to your computer. Don't need to print it out unless you want to. But if Heather can get the library or the water department in your city to pass these out, I'm sure she can leave some of the publications there and some of the rain gauges there. So this is the Save Tarrant Water, or Water's Awesome, or Tarrant Water. This will bring you here. And this is the weekly watering advice that you could sign. This is how easy this is, that you can sign up for. And you will get an email or a text message, whichever you choose, to say, you don't need to water this week. It rained 1.5 inches last Sunday. You know, it's going to be like that. Or yes, you need to water, you know, and then you have a free sprinkler checkup where they can come and check your sprinkler and adjust your schedule. And then you have a Green Pros thing. The Green Pro program was started by Tarrant Extension Office, the Tarrant County Extension Office, through Laura Miller. She's the commercial horticulture agent in Tarrant County, and Tarrant Regional Water District. And they invited landscape people and irrigators to take these classes. All about saving water, not wasting it and running it down the storm drain, not watering when it's raining and freezing. All of those wonderful things that we've discussed today. So this is, I'm now an orchid grower, not a Texas A&M employee, and this is my email if you want it. So please go to the website and your city and waterisawesome.com or Save Tarrant Water and get the information about this. I hope I have given you some ideas of things that you can do in yourself. I hope that I've given you the encouragement to do it, the inspiration to do this. And I want to thank you for all your time and attention that you've given today. Thank you. Are there any questions we need to answer now, or do we need to do it through email?
No, it looks like we actually have one question right now. So if you're still tuned in, everyone, if you have a question, you can go ahead and type it into the box now. But someone did ask, and I think that this has been asked before too, like, what is the name of that tool that you have, that special little sprinkler tool?
Yeah, you know, it's like a sprinkler tool. I don't think there's really a name for it. Sprinkler tools, pliers, maybe.
Sprinkler
I don't know.
pliers, maybe,
But I know that this is Rainbird one. I know that Home Depot has them in the irrigation department. Usually they're hanging in little plastic bags like this, and they're right there where all the other, where the nozzles are sold, the risers are sold, pipe is sold, things like that. They're right there.
Okay.
About
so
$3.51, last one I bought.
Okay, so they should be cheap and they should be right there next to everything in the irrigation section. So we should be able to find them easily and quickly. Okay, great. Well, I think it looks like that's all the questions unless any more come in right now. So again, if you are in Watauga, I'm going to get with the Watauga people, the city people, and I'm going to see if they can offer it maybe at the library or the city hall or something like that. And we'll put the publication that Dottie's talking about and that sprinkler kit as well there for everyone to pick up. So I'll send everybody an email and let them know if you can pick it up, when you can pick it up, or where you can pick it up, and all of that. And again, if you want to hear about some more events that are happening in the future, go to savetarrantwater.com and a lot of the resources and everything that Dottie and I both talked about. And you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter that has more information just like this. So thank you so much again, Dottie, for all of your wisdom and all of your knowledge and sharing everything with us. And thank you, everyone else, for joining us this afternoon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you.